We started the book of Eov, which is not very popular. A lot of people sort of just skip it because it's scary. They all know that this is the book that you learn on Be'av, so we don't really want to touch it. Also, one second, this one. I wanted to remind people to close their microphones and open them only when necessary. Okay, so this way we don't have the. Okay, fine. Bobby, welcome. Nice having you. Okay, so let's catch up quickly on what we discussed. We spoke about Sefer Eov being an allegory or a story that was written in order to deliver a message. And well, one second. Stop. I have. What's the matter with you? How should running the class without saying how to? I want to say that this time. Wait, someone has an open microphone, and I want to say that this time it's the first time I'm giving the class from my home in Maryland. So it's sort of like a Hanukkah Havayit class, and very exciting. And you're all welcome to visit whenever you're in the area. Some of you are in the area, but those who are not, you're always welcome to come and visit. So now back to the book. So Sefer Eov, interesting book. Thank you, Adam. So Sefer Eov, interesting book. Like I said, it's when we think of Eov, when we think of Job, we think of someone who's suffering for no reason, arguing with God, and really it's the question of theodicy, the divine justice. Why do good people suffer? Or as one of the poets put it, only the good die young. So but the story of Eov really was written most probably by Yirmiyahu, the prophet Jeremiah, and the idea of the book is to present this question and discuss really not only this question of divine justice and why do people suffer, but also the question of what is our purpose in the world? What is the purpose of the mitzvot? Why does God ask us to do certain things? What is the relationship between us and Hashem, us and the world, us and other human beings? So in essence, it might be the most important book of philosophy in all of Tanakh. And especially since it comes at the heels of the Chumash, meaning at the end of the period of the Nevi'im, and it gives us a new perspective of how to understand the Torah, how to understand the history that came before that. So we went over the first chapter, which is the introduction, where we see the Eov and his family and his children. I spoke about the fact that we have here symbolic numbers all around the number 10. You have like complete units. He has 7 sons, 3 daughters, 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 oxen, 500 donkeys, and so on. And eventually lives 140 years, which is 7 times 20 times 7. All these things show us that there is something. It's a literary device that is supposed to draw our attention. Then we have this introduction where Bnei Elohim, the sons of God or the angels, come to talk to God, and among them we also have Satan. And Hashem and God asks Satan, "Where do you come from?" And he says, "I was traveling around." And Hashem says, "Did you see my servant Eov? Can you appreciate his righteousness?" And Satan answers, "He only behaves like that because you take care of him. But once you afflict him, he will turn against you and he will curse you." And that's the other point that we brought to light, which is that the main concern of Eov is that he will curse God. And I asked the question, why is he so concerned about that? And I think that the answer is that this is something that he really wants to do. It's scary to think about that, but it is the sort of, it's like the Freudian slip that we're always afraid of. There's something on the tip of our tongue that we're about to say, but we always hold ourselves back. But then if we get angry, get upset, or whatever reason, we don't care anymore, we might just say it. That's what Eov is afraid of. Eov, in his heart, entertains thoughts of, I don't like the way the world is run by God. I have different ideas of how to run the world. And at any moment, he's willing, if he could, to confront God and tell him this is not the way to do things. But he's afraid because God is more powerful. This is the premise. This is what I want to work around with and see how it fits into the text. So Satan tells God, Eov fears God for a good reason. It's because you took care of him, but if you destroy him or if you afflict him, he will turn against you. And Hashem says, okay, you have my permission. And the following part of the story is that Eov is being informed that all of his possessions have been destroyed, either taken captive or as a loot or burnt to the ground. And finally, a wind destroys the house where his children were having a party together. And Eov tears his clothes and it says, that's it. I have nothing more on me. He says, I came naked from my mother's womb, and I will return there naked here. Naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord had taken. Blessed be the name of the Lord. It's a very famous pasuk that we still say at funerals. Even Christian funerals use this verse. Then, I mean, this is all recap, and we took a 2 weeks break, and here we read how the angels and Satan come again to visit God, and Hashem says, "What do you think of Eov?" And look at this pasuk. There is none like him in the earth, a wholehearted and an upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil, and he still holds fast his integrity, although you moved me against him to destroy him without cause. And that's a key phrase that tells us that this story did not really take place, but rather it's a literary creation that is meant to deliver a message, because we remember very clearly from the previous chapter that it was Hashem who instigated Satan against Eov. So the way the author presents it is as if, from the point of view of the author, it's a narrative that tells us don't read things literally. It's not what happened. From the point of view of Eov, it's almost as if he portrays God as a bully, as someone who uses his power negatively, violently, and then blames others. So I didn't do that. You told me to do that. So, but in any case, we put this aside. I just wanted to highlight the problems of the text and how eventually we'll be able to figure out what the message is here. Satan answers, people trade literally skin for skin, meaning Eov is willing to sacrifice his children to save himself, but if you afflict him personally, he will curse you to your face. And again, God tells Satan, go ahead and do it. He smites Job with sore boils from the sole of his foot even onto his crown, like his whole body. Very shameful, very, very degrading. He's not a human being anymore. He takes a potsherd to scrape himself, and he sits among the ashes. So Eov is reduced to almost an animal. He has nothing, he has no possessions, he has no children, he has no dignity. He cannot have his bodily functions normally. And now, on top of all that, his wife turns against him and says, you still hold fast to your integrity? Blaspheme God and die. So she's not with him on the same page. And he answers, you speak as one of the impious women. Shall we receive only the good and not the evil? And he still did not sin with his lips. And here the author hints that maybe in his heart there is a problem. So I think we got to this point last time. And the way I wanted to understand what Eov's wife says is that she tells him that all his life he believed that there is a system. There's a system of reward and punishment. If you do good, you're rewarded. If you do evil, you're punished. And God runs this system. God knows what people do. And now she says, you see, it doesn't work. Even though you did all these great things, you still have your integrity, your wholesomeness. Just turn against God, because the world is evil, the world is unjust, God is unjust, there's no system really, He does whatever He wants, and the only way to not suffer is commit suicide. So I think the question was raised last week. Someone wanted to know if we have here a discussion in the whole book, a discussion of Olam Haba, and the answer is probably not. We don't have a reference to Olam Haba, but rather this is the what we see is that they only talk about this world, what is happening here, and if you don't like this world, then commit suicide and leave it. This is what his wife said. So this is one thing that we learn from her statement. The other thing is that, and that was the other thing we spoke about last time, is that she was not influenced by him, as well as his children, because this is the part that in the first chapter, that whenever his children would have a party together, Eov would summon them and bring sacrifices for them, lest they curse God. So we see here a complete failure of education. Eov is someone who's wholesome and has integrity and believes in God, fails to convey this message to his wife and children. What they want, they lead their lives as usual. They're not affected by him. And that failure is a failure of his system, that he thought this is the way to behave in the world. This we contrasted with Abraham, who the way the Torah speaks about him. How does Hashem refer to Abraham? Hashem speaks about Abraham as כי דעתיו למען אשר יצווה את בניו וביתו אחריו שמרו דרך השם לעשות צדקה ומשפט. I know that Abraham will educate and pass the word on to the children after him. And finally, the last comparison that we drew was that Eov and Noah are mentioned in Sefer Yechezkel in one phrase as the people who will not be able to save their country. The Navi gives 4 examples of a disaster that hit the country: famine, plague, wild beasts, or war. And in all cases, the prophet says, if those men will be there, Eov and Noah, they only will be able to save themselves. They will not be able to save others. And that is the concept of Eov as someone who's selfish, who's only concentrated in himself, and cannot convey his message or his teaching onto others, just like Noah did not stand up for his generation when he was told that the flood is coming, and as a matter of fact, failed in even education his own children, as we see that Ham, when he saw Noah in a disgraceful situation, shamed him further instead of protecting his dignity. Okay, so far this is a recap of what we did before. Any questions on that? You're welcome. Don't feel hesitant. Anyone who wants to just open your microphone and ask if you need to. So good. That shows that I'm a very good teacher because you have no questions. Yes, Yaakov?
Rabbi, what country was that Eretz Ut?
So that's what I mentioned originally, that it's all symbolic, and we can probably look at the word Ut as coming from the root Aitzah, and as in Utzu Aitzah Vetufar. And in the Tanakh, the word Ish Aitzah a man of advice means a very wise man, someone that you would consult, someone that you seek his opinion on certain issues. So Ish Eretz Utz is the irony is here's Eov who lives in the land of Utz, in the land where supposedly he's able to give advice to others, but when he is tested, he failed the test.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, so now we have, following that, we read about Eov's friends. He has three friends who heard all the evil that came upon him, and Eliphaz the Temanite, probably like Eliphaz of the south, Bildad the Shuhai of place called Shuah, Sofar Na'amati. I mean, we could look at those words as symbolic, but I want to dwell on them right now. But they made an appointment together to come to bemoan him and to comfort him. So Eov should have been really very, very happy. How beautiful it is that you have friends who would come and sit with you and talk to you when you're in pain. So they come, they see him, they cannot recognize him because of his miserable shape, because of the boils he was afflicted with. They tear their clothes, they throw dust upon their heads, and they sit down with him 7 days and 7 nights, and they don't speak a word because they see that it's too painful, which is actually so far so good. Probably it would be recommended behavior. Too often we have I see situations where people come to a shiva and they decide to comfort the mourners, and they just say terrible things, such as, it's a good thing that this happened, for meant to be, but usually they comfort with words like "I suffered more," and they tell greater tragedies. So it's not great. To your question, it's not where the laws of mourning come from, but this is a hint of how things were done. Mourning, just as a side comment because of your question, I'll say that in the Torah there are really no laws of mourning. There are only references to practices, to what people used to do. They speak about mourning, about crying, tearing one's clothes, putting ashes on one's head, walking barefoot, etc., etc. But all these things are just practices and more of a suggestion than a commandment, because in reality, when one is in mourning, when one is in grief, no one can dictate to that person how to mourn. But rather, what the Torah wanted to do, or what the rabbis tried to do with the laws of Avelut, is to facilitate mourning, to make it easier for people to grieve, because sometimes they try to keep everything bottled inside, and this repressed grief eventually comes back and causes them more damage. That's why the halakha states halakha kedivra mekel be'avel. Whenever you have a question or a debate between two opinions, you follow the more lenient opinion. So that's just a side comment regarding avelut. It really has to stem from the person, from the mourner, and not being imposed on him from the outside. And again, I'm sure it's all too common to see that when someone is in avelut, there are so many friends around who know exactly what he has to do. You should throw the shoes away, cut the shoes, wear the shoes, and stuff like that. When it comes to the shoes of the niftar, you're allowed to sit down, not to sit down, etc., etc. And the person just becomes more and more confused, and they should let him or her deal with their grief with the halakha, but in a more flexible and balanced way. So now we move to chapter 4. And don't worry, we're not going to do all chapters. There are 42 chapters. We're not going to do all of them verse by verse. We're just we're going to talk about the main points, and then actually we're in chapter 3. So finally, Eov opens his mouth and curses, but he does not turn against God. He curses his day. What does he say? ויען איוב ויאמר, יאבד יום ייוולד בו, והלילה אמר הורג גבר. היום ההוא יהי חושך על ידרשו אלוה ממעל, ועל תופע עליו נהרה. Let the day perish wherein I was born, and the night wherein it was said, a man child is brought forth. Let the day be darkness. Let not God inquire after it from above, neither let the light shine upon it. Those are very, very harsh words. I remember reading Eov with my grandfather. Those were very powerful verses, and he used to chant them in the traditional music of a melody of Eov, and they sort of like became engraved in my mind. To think that someone could speak so harshly about his life, and with the tune it goes like this: "Vayani Eov vayomar yovad yom yivaled bo ve'alayla amaro ragavel hayomo yehoshech." So I think that we feel this severe
pain.
What?
A lot of pain.
A lot of pain in this text. But the question is, what does Eov mean when he says, "Let the day in which I was born, let it be cursed"? And by the way, this is one of the clues that the book was written by Yirmiyahu, because Yirmiyahu has the same exact statement that actually, in maybe a little different words, he turns to his mother and he says, "Why did you give birth to me? Why?" And he says, "Cursed be the man who came and told my father that he has a child." So it's the same exact thing we find in Yirmiyahu, and there are many other hints here. So Yirmiyahu, or the author of Eov, says, "Let the night be taken by darkness. Let it not rejoice among the days of the year. Let it not come into the number of the months. Let it be desolate. Let no joyful voice come therein. Let it be cursed." And it goes on and on and on. Why? Why is he so upset at his day? Because Lama lo merechem amut mi beten es nevegva. Why did I not die from the womb? Why did I not perish at birth? Why did knees receive me? Why was I breastfed? Because if that would have happened, for now, should I have lain still and been quiet, I should have slept, then had I been at rest. Now, what is Eov saying here? How do you understand? How do you understand these words of Eov saying, "I wish that day or night would have disappeared, that this day and night would be cursed. I wish I would have never been born before at all." This is I always when I read this, it reminds me of Bohemian Rhapsody, where he says, "I don't want to die. Sometimes I think I'd rather not." How does it go? "I don't want to die. I've never been born at all." Right. So this is a reference of Freddie Mercury to you. Okay, because here mentions Kochvei Nishpo, let the stars of the twilight, there will be dark, so it was Mercury. Anyway, back to the question. What is he saying? Grace, he seems to be saying that he.
It sounds.
Yes.
It sounds like he's severely depressed, that he wish he was just never born, like we just said earlier.
He's severely depressed. It's not. He doesn't feel like what a wonderful life. Rich is sending me this text. It's a wonderful life. It's not such a wonderful life. He's suffering, but but what is his point in cursing the day? What is he going to do with that? Is it just so we can see that, like you're saying, his depression is he feels that his whole life had no purpose, had no meaning. He did not achieve anything because now everything is taken away from him. If he lived for his children, he lived for his possessions, or maybe he lived for himself. But now everything is taken away from him, so he has nothing. So there's another element here that I think we could understand as Eov being on the same page as his wife. He just rejects her solution. What his wife said was that there's no system. The world is random. And that God afflicts people at will. Is a whimsical tyrant. He does whatever he wants. She said, "You should commit suicide and leave this world." Eov says, "I'm sorry, but I have no such option." I have one open microphone. Saying Jacob and Israela. Welcome, Israela.
Hi.
Hi, Israela. Yeah, you had a question?
I've never used this before.
Okay, so
Never used this before.
okay, so I'm going to close your microphone. I'm going to mute it, but if you want to talk, then you can press the button that shows, raise a hand or send me a chat, and I'll open it. Okay. Okay. So otherwise we have reverb, and it's distracting. So what the Yogi is saying is the following. He says that no. So Grace raised the question. I don't say. He says he already suffers, so why kill himself? If we take out of the equation and realize what is being said is very powerful. If you take out of the equation of our life on earth, living as observant people and adhering to a certain legal code, if you take Olam Haba, if you take heaven and the nether world out of the equation, how many people you think will remain observant as they are today? Let's say, ask yourselves this question. Let's say I knew for sure that after 120 years or 70, whenever the time comes, that we leave this world, there's nothing afterwards. It's only the here and now. Would we be observant the same way that we are today? Can I have a show of hands by chat or something?
Probably not.
There will be none. People will say, okay, what's the point? What's the point? So we admit that we do all that because we want some kind of reward. We want some kind of peace and quiet in the world to come, or at least we want not to be tortured. We don't want to be thrown into boiling tar pits. Right? This is what most people think of. But if we take this out and we think only about this world, right, which seems to be, as we'll see, this is Iyov's world. Iyov only speaks about this world, and Iyov says, as long as I know that I'm guaranteed peace and quiet in this world, I'm fine with that. But if this is taken away, I don't understand. Now, his wife says, you have an option. You can opt out. Iyov says, I do not have an option. Now he's trying to understand why did this happen to him, and his conclusion is that it has to do maybe with what people today refer to as astrology. Is the zodiac, is the constellation of the stars of the heavenly bodies on the day in which he was born. That's why he says, let that night not be counted among the days of the year. Let it not come into the number of the months. As if saying, oh, I was born on Friday the 13th, a terrible day. Anyone who was born on Friday the 13th, forever. And even if his whole life is the most perfect person, most pious person, eventually will suffer. By saying that, he negates the system. There's no system, there's no reward and punishment. Because God randomly chose certain days that people who are born on these days will suffer. So, in a way, he says the same thing as his wife. He just doesn't see an option to leave. Yes.
Sorry, just saying with too many buttons.
Okay, no problem. No
Rabbi,
problem.
I have a question, Rabbi.
Yes.
Do we know how old he was at this time when he was suffering all this time?
It's a good question. No, it doesn't say that. What it does, it's in chapter 42. He says, "Vashem berach." It says, "Vayihi Iyov acharei zot 140 shana." So after this whole thing, he lived 140 years. It seems like, if we really ask this question, it seems like it's a man in the prime of his life. Could be 40, could be 50, or something like that. He already made his fortune. He has 10 children. But we don't know his age before. Again, this is part of the reason that I said that we don't know the essential details about the Iyov, where he came from, his place, etc., because this whole thing is literary work, is just a frame story meant to deliver the message about the Odyssey and our purpose in the world. So Iyov. So let me define now. I think that at this point we can define how Iyov views the world and his role in the world vis-a-vis God. In his mind, the world was created by God, who was omnipotent, omniscient, and God basically runs the world. God, because God is all powerful, He could do whatever He wants. He demands that people will do certain things, which we call mitzvot, and they will not do other things, which we call avirot, so don't transgress them. Eov does not understand why we should do that. Meaning, if we go into the ancient debate about what is called ta'amei mitzvot, why do we do certain mitzvot? Eov is of the opinion that the mitzvot have no point at all. Even the things that seem to us natural, like not to kill, or things that maybe are not natural to all, but are understood by some. I'll address your question, Alec, in a second. So other mitzvot that are seen like, let's say, tzedakah, charity, social justice, we understand the merit of it. We understand that when we give someone something, we help someone, we feel elated, we feel good. It's good for us, it's good for them, it's good for the society, it's good for the community, and so on and so forth. And then there are certain mitzvot that we cannot come. Eov, in a way, doesn't even want to bother to understand why he does certain mitzvot. That's the law, and he has to follow. And all he knows that if he follows the law, he'll be rewarded. Now, it sounds really strange, but there are a lot of religious people who do it today because they do the mitzvot in order to achieve their olam haba. So they do it for a reward. They give charity, yes. Do they delve into the meaning of charity and how I can commiserate and understand the other person? Not necessarily. But the problem with this approach is that it really twists completely the point of the Torah in how it addresses our life. I'm talking about the golden rule of Yad Zaken, who said, love the others as you love yourself. That's the whole Torah. That's the whole Torah. All the rest is commentary. So according to Hillel, the way that I understand, the whole Torah is directed at the other, not at oneself. So all I do is meant to help others improve and progress. So if they do the same, then we all benefit. But it's a mutual reciprocal system. Meanwhile, Eov, the way Eov operates, he says, I want to help others so I will be successful. I want to help others so I will not die, so I will not suffer, so I will not be afflicted. So his approach to all the mitzvot is selfish. So whereas the Torah wants to turn us into altruistic human beings, Eov remains selfish. That's why he also remains is shut in. He's only concentrated on himself. He cannot affect his wife or children. That I think is something that will resurface, and we'll see how he says it over and over again to Hashem and to his friends. Elliot brought up this question: must it be astrological, meaning what Eov says, or can we see it existentially, or is that my modern view? So it could be that it's being an existentialist. It says there's no point in life, but I am focusing on the choice of words of specifying that day. So that day does not belong in the year. So I think that's what he means within the system, the philosophical system of the day. Probably that is what he meant. But by the same token, you could say that we see people who are who are going through tragedies and the first reaction is, I don't want to be religious, as if their whole reason of being religious is that it maintains a certain balance between them and God. But once this balance doesn't work, they're willing to let go of their whole system belief. Yeah, so it's true that, and Elias brings out the point that people curse their day, but the way we talk today, that people curse their birthday or themselves, is all based on Eov. And when Eov says that, he says that moment is bad omen. That's one way to see it. I'm not saying that's the only way to see it. We could also argue that he just says there's no point in life. Life is pointless. Life is purposeless. But we must live through it because God commanded. To one query, it's Elliot Brahai asking the questions. We have a couple of Elliots here. Okay, so and Elliot, it's good to have you. So we go on with this, and then he says, what would have happened? What would have happened if he would not have been born, or if he would have died at birth? If I were not alive, now should I have lain still and been quiet. I should have slept. Then had I been at rest. With kings and councils of the earth who build up waste places for themselves. Beautiful in Hebrew, habonim horavot lamo. They build up not castles but waste places because they are going to be destroyed. Or with princes that have gold who fill their houses with silver. Or as a hidden untimely birth I had not been. As infants that never saw light. He says, what's the difference between a stillbirth, a baby who died at birth, or the greatest kings and ministers or princes? They all die. So David is asking, did he understand the intrinsic values of mitzvot? It seems that he did not. We'll go through it later. We'll see that Eov does not understand the intrinsic values of mitzvot, and I'll tell you why he did not. Because if we say that the whole purpose of the mitzvot is to help others, then it does not. They do not guarantee me salvation or protection or success or health, right? So, from the point of view of the selfish individual, or the selfish gene, because we have a selfish gene. We all want to survive. We want to protect ourselves. If we don't get this protection, so why should we provide it for others? So this is no point in the mitzvah. I'm wondering, did you ever run into people who think like that, or I'm the only one? I don't mean that I'm the only one who thinks like that. I mean that I'm the only one who ran into people who think like that, because I see it very often. In any case, he says, there the wicked cease from troubling, and the weary are at rest. There are no prisoners, there are no slaves. The small and the great are there alike. Here is his question: Lama yiten le'amel or b'chayim le'marei nafesh? Why is life given to him that is in misery, and life unto the bitter in soul? Those who long for death, but it does not come, but dig for it more than for his treasures. You see the contrast between him and his wife. His wife says, yeah, you could get out, just commit suicide. He says, no, I have to live. But why does God give me life? Why does God force me to be in this world? I don't want to be here. It's not just because of depression, because he says, if I cannot derive benefit from every moment that I'm alive, then there's no point for it. And he says, and here finally makes this confession. He admits, כי פחדתי ויאטייני, ואשר יגורתי יבוא לי, לא שלבתי ולא שקטתי ונונחתי ויעבור רוגז. He says, the thing which I did fear has come upon me, and that which I was afraid of had overtaken me. I was not at ease, neither was I quiet, neither had I rest, but trouble came. Meaning, Eov lives in fear. The fear he lives in is that at one point, God will not approve of him and will smite him. And now he says, it happened. So all his life, he's doing the right thing, not because it's the right thing to do, but rather because this is what he was told. As they say in Hebrew, lema davar dumeh, someone who comes to, let's say, someone who works in a factory, and is being told, okay, let's say it's a cake factory, and they told him, you have to put now to add butter, and now flour, and now water, etc., etc. And he comes to work every day and he thinks, you know what? I would really like to put sawdust or some metal or quicksilver there, but I cannot do that because I'll be fired by my boss. So he would never think of, if I do that, people might die because of food poisoning. No, just this is what I have to do. It's a very, very crude analogy, but it's the same thing with Eov, who says, I must give tzedakah, pray to Hashem, eat kosher. Really most of the mitzvot that he mentions are in the social justice field, not really specific to the Jewish people, which is another indication that it's a moral story and not a true occurrence. Can't hear you. Now can you hear me? Okay. Either it's my fault or I was saying things that I was not supposed to say. And no, I'm joking. So what I was saying is that yes, this is a lot of people practice this way. They think about what's in it for them. How are they going to benefit? How are they going to benefit from their keeping of Torah mitzvot? Once in a while, they feel elated or excited in one way or another because they did a mitzvah, they did something good, and maybe they can't even pinpoint it. It got to an extreme. I remember once reading a whole halachic discussion on the statement of mitzvot lav le'anot nitnu, that you're not allowed to enjoy the mitzvot, and they were discussing what happens if you derive benefits, you enjoy the mitzvah. Let's say you gave tzedakah to someone and you feel so good about it, and they say, this is a problem because you're enjoying the mitzvah and you're taking something for yourself. Now it's going to take away from your part in Olam Haba. So, but Eov does operate within that mentality. Everything he does in order to save himself and to guarantee himself a good life, but he fails. So now his whole world came down, and okay. So I'm going to read to you Elliot's argument because for some reason I can't get the chance to go to everyone. And Elliot Braha says the following: in order for his stance to resonate with others, I don't feel we should reduce his argument to the position that he lives only for the selfish reward. Poetic arguments need to have universal reverberation. So we'll see the poetic arguments that Eov has, but they revolve around one axis, which is, he says, I did all the right things. I followed the book to the letter. I did whatever you told me to do. Why are you not treating me the way you promised me? And then he says, you're doing it because you're more powerful than I am. So I think that I'm not trying to reduce his argument. I see that Eov Eov himself says that. Eov says that the only reason to do it is for the selfish reward. I have to put aside for a second, the different ways of approaching Eov. We see maybe as a martyr or as a righteous person. The introduction to Eov calls him Ish Yireh Elohim V'Sar Merah, let me go back to this introduction for a second, because this gives it gives us the air of righteousness, and we think that Eov is the perfect person. But I know that I mentioned that when we started, there is a problem with this description. והיה האיש ההוא תם וישר ירא אלוהים ושר מרע. So we have someone who's wholesome, wholehearted, and upright, and one who fears God, and one who shuns evil. So there's a problem with this statement. There's a problem with this description, I think, because the way to do it is first sur mira v'aseh tov, that you naturally shun evil, but in addition, you also rise to the levels of wholesomeness and uprightness. Instead, is a tam v'yashar v'yireh Elohim, and because he fears God, he shuns evil. That's like the mafia man that an Israeli mafioso who became in jail about teshuvah, and he was interviewed on the Israeli TV, and the guy sits there with the big kippah, and the interviewer asks him, "So what do you do now for a living? Now you're out of jail. You learn in yeshiva half a day. What do you do for a living?" He says, "I collect debts." He's a debt collector, and he says, when I call someone and I say, "You better pay your debt back," they know that they shouldn't play around. So this kind of teshuvah, he just doesn't kill them because he became about teshuvah kiviyachol, he believes in God, but he did not change one bit in being a really righteous person from within. This is how I see it. Could be at home with the mafia or in the yeshiva. The only difference is whether he thinks that God is more powerful or the dawn is more powerful. You just go with the strongest player. So I'm going back to chapter 4, and finally we have his friend talking to him. Eliphaz says, if one venture a word into you, will you be weary? And who can withhold himself from speaking? He says, I would read this as saying, we didn't even try talking to you, and you already are exhausted. So I must address you. As saying, basically, he tells him, you're exaggerating. You're talking too much. Why? You have instructed many. You have strengthened the weak hands. Your words have upheld him that was falling, and you have strengthened the feeble knees. But now that it came upon you, you are weary. It touches you, and you are frightened. So what Eliphaz tells him, you helped everyone who was in pain. You always came and comforted them and said that they should be able to overcome, and they have strength, etc., etc., and they actually helped them. But now, when you are inflicted, when you suffer, you can't take it. He says, "Zechorna miu naki avad ve'efo yesharim nichadu." Remember, I pray thee, whoever perished being innocent, where were the upright cut off? So now, what is Eliphaz telling Eov when he says, remember, who is the innocent person who ever perished? What is he suggesting? Come on, it's a question, guys, girls. Right, Bobby. So he says, Eliphaz is basically telling Eov, you're guilty. Why are you complaining so much? Look what God did to me, etc., etc. If he did this to you, you probably deserve it. And that's the point where we say, thank you very much. I'm so happy that I have friends like this. Now please go away. Right? This is what Eov should have said. You came here to tell me that I deserve my suffering, that I deserved it and probably I'm guilty. I don't think that's what I wanted to hear. But this is what Eliphaz says. Zechor namiuna ki avad ve'efo yesharim nichadu. Whoever perished being innocent, or where were the upright cut off? So like asher ra'iti horeshei aven ve'zorei amal yikteru. He says, but I've seen those who plow iniquity, so mischief reap the same. By the breath of God they perish, and by the breath of his anger they are consumed. He tells him, you probably are one of the people who plow iniquity and sow mischief, and therefore you reap the same. What you got is what you deserve. Maybe we can see that because you were able to hide it. And in a funny way, he does touch an open nerve with Eov, because this deep inside, Eov is not happy. Is not happy with the God. He has his argument. He wants to confront God and argue with him, but he's not willing to admit it. Not yet. Let me show you. Let me go 1 second a little ahead. He says, he keeps on talking like that to Hashem. He says, why do you make me suffer? Why here? I'm skipping to chapter 9. Eov tells him, I know the truth of what you're saying, but how can men be just with God? If one should desire to contend with him, he could not answer him 1 of 1,000. He is wise, he is mighty, he removes mountains, he shakes the earth, he commands the sun to not rise, etc., etc. He says, he says, let's say I decide to argue with him. Even if I were righteous, I would not answer. I would make supplication to him that contends with me. So in other words, he says, I cannot argue with God because God is more powerful. We're not on an equal basis, and therefore I cannot argue with him. So he wishes for a world where he is as powerful as God and he can deal with him. So that also gives us an indication that he abides by the system only because God is more powerful and not because he understands the purpose of the system. And like some people commented, this is really the way a lot of religious people view their observance today. They do it because they're commanded to do it. The benefit in it is the benefit to have, olam haba, to have good life, and it's not their fault because the rabbis keep talking about it over and over and over again. They come to collect tzedakah. They say, if you give tzedakah, you'll be safe. Put mezuzah, you'll be protected. Learn Torah, you'll be protected. Eat kosher, you'll be smarter, etc., etc. And then when tragedy strikes, they will say, "Oh, there's probably something that we didn't know, or maybe it was the Gilgul, the reincarnation." No one addresses the question of what is the purpose of doing the mitzvot. Eventually, our whole system is geared towards ourselves. It became a selfish system. I do the mitzvot only in order to guarantee myself a good life, and that's not right. So Eliphaz keeps on talking to Eov, and he tells him when he speaks about those who do evil and eventually reap the fruits of their evil. Elai davar yegunav. One second. David is asking whether Eliphaz was asking what innocent men ever died. As a question, was a rhetorical question. No, it's a real question. It's like, of course, rhetorical question. Sorry, that show me one innocent man who has died. By the way, this goes against all of Tanakh. That in many cases in Tehillim, David HaMelech says that he sees how the righteous suffer and the evil people succeed. So there's no real answer to that. But Eliphaz claimed that now a word was secretly brought to me my ear received a whisper thereof. And that is a certain, like he describes in it, wow, fear came upon me, I'm trembling, my bones are shaking, the spirit passes before my face, and it stands still and says, shall mortal man be just before God? Shall a man be pure before his maker? Behold, he puts no trust in his servants, and his angels he charged with folly. How much more them who dwell in houses of clay, whose foundation is in the dust, who are crushed before the moth. This, we can say, is a very Christian approach, and indeed, Shochne Bate Homer was translated to Latin. There's a hymn that is being sung in churches, and what Eliphaz is saying is you must accept the divine judgment. Whatever God did is right. You deserve it, and he says even his servant, his angels, are not foolproof. Even more so you. So we end up so far when we got to this point of the book, we have seen three approaches to divine justice. That's my interpretation of three approaches. Iyov's wife says the world is unjust and there's no point in life, you should commit suicide. Iyov says that, again, life, just like his wife, life is pointless, life is meaningless, because life is random and your good deeds guarantee nothing. It's just sort of the grace of God which will save you. But he says there's no way out. I must live. I complain to God about living, but I can do nothing about it. And his friends, so far we've seen Eliphaz say, God is just. You deserve your punishment. You probably did something that you don't know about or that we don't know about, and you pretend to be righteous, but you deserve it. So these are the three opinions, three approaches to why the good suffer, or which we could reduce it to. One is they suffer for no reason, the world is random, there's no system. The other opinion is there is a system, and there must be something you did that was wrong. Okay, so I'll stop here and I'll open the floor for questions and comments. You could do it with chat or so. Okay, so Alex, I want to see this Kodeo question. His argument is so powerful, stated that we may even apply them to all and not just to those who observe the mitzvot with misguided intentions. So yes, of course, that Yov is an extreme. Yov is an extreme example. Not all people are like that, but really the question that bothers us, I think the question that bothers the believer is probably the greatest question is, why do people suffer? We try to find an explanation. So, and we as humans, we constantly try to explain things that happen around us, because if we cannot find an explanation, we're confused. We become aimless. We don't know where to go and how to proceed. This is how we're programmed. We're programmed to find patterns and to find answers. So we must provide a certain explanation. So when we face something that has no explanation, like usually it's when tragedy strikes at at enormous proportions, like the tsunami or an earthquake or Sandy or Katrina, the Holocaust, or when it seems cruel and meaningless, like the murder of innocent people or children who are killed or plagues and stuff like that. So, or when it strikes close to home, where someone that we know very well, and or someone that we thought is so righteous that could never suffer. All these things bring to light the question of why is this happening, and we're trying to find the meaning there. We're trying to find a system. So they hopefully will discuss. Sorry, we'll discuss it next week for sure. But I'll see one more question here from David. Right. So if you take the second approach, which is God is paying you for something, so people look at it as measure for measure. And I also answered Nehama's question of how do we know that he could not influence his family? So yes, people try to find the measure for measure. It's again, it's embedded in our system. So when you add to this a religious system, let's say someone drops a cup at home and it breaks. So one person might say, "Oh, it's a dairy cup. Probably I broke it because yesterday I didn't wait enough. I waited only 5.5 hours between meat and dairy. I should have waited 6. Because I only waited 5.5. Now this dairy cup is gone. Maybe it's because your hands were shaking or you were tired or something like that. No, there was a reason for that. But those are small things. But you come to the point where you cannot offer the measure for measure, and that's where people get stuck. That's why I mentioned when it's young children or where it's a something of a magnitude like 9/11 and tsunami, etc. Nehama, the reason I said that we think he could not influence his family is that we never see that his children understood the message that he wanted to teach them. We never talks to them. He never says, "Come, my children, this is the way to behave. Don't do this." Rather, he says, "Okay, you had a party, beautiful. Let me bring sacrifices and make up for any wrongdoing you might have committed." His wife, the moment he falls, says, "Okay, commit suicide and leave this world. Curse God. Go against everything you taught me." So that's one reason to say that he did not influence his families. The other one is that he is equated in the Tanakh later on in the book of Yehezkel. He is compared to Noah. And when we draw the line between Noah and Eov, we try to understand the connection, is that both of them did not influence the people around them. So there are no more questions or comments. Thank you, Nehama, too. We'll call it a night. Thank you, Adam, Bobby, David. I would suggest it's David Braha, right? And David Dweck, Elliot Braha, Elliot, Grace, Helen, Josh, Nehama, Richie, Israela, and Yosef. Thank you all. Thank you for your those of. Yeah. Oh, you did want to get a tour of the new house? I think not. I mean, maybe I don't know if I can do it. Maybe next time it's still a little. I mean, basically what you're going to see is mostly boxes everywhere. This is, and I don't even know how I can do it with this camera. See, so let me see. And my wife will kill me if she knows I showed you the house like that. Next time I go to say, thank you so much. Good night. All the best. And
Thank you. Good night.
thank you, Bobby. Laila Tov. Thank you for your blessings and good wishes.
Good night. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good luck.
Good night. Bye. Bye. Thank you, Grace.
Let us know when you come back to New York to visit.
Okay, I might be in New York tomorrow. Just a quick visit, but I'm coming back at night. So next time I'll come is when you make special Shabbat in Bet Torah and you invite a scholar and residents and a nice Sabbath or something like that. No.
That's Hashem, God willing.
Okay.
Good luck. Send your wife our best.
Okay, I will. All the best. Stay in. Bye.